People on social media who tell you that carb restriction and keto is the only way to lose fat, they are lying to you. This is a very misleading information that has been spread on social media. In this video, we will look at the actual freaking research so you can make a conscious decision to incorporate a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet in your lifestyle or not. And don't listen to the fake health experts online who can literally ruin your life. Let's just talk about different kinds of carbs before starting the discussion on the effects of weight loss on low carb diets. Simple carbohydrates are food sources like rice, pasta, bread, fruits, cereals that release glucose acutely. And no, releasing glucose fast, acutely is not a bad thing. It's all contextual. It's a discussion for a separate video. And yes, it's not all bad when you look at objectively. Complex carbs, on the other hand, are carbohydrates that release glucose in a very gradual and slow manner in your bloodstream. And so these will be grains, beans, oats, and though this type of carb has fiber in it. And what fiber does is fiber creates a way to excrete water from your GI tract. And so it adds bulk to your stool by adding water. And so fiber is a water absorber. And so having good fiber in your diet will help you not only improve your gut health, digestion, but also to excrete the water out from your GI tract. Okay, so now we have touched on that. We will look at the first effect of low carb diet on weight loss. Just to point out that whenever you go on a low carb diet, let's say you are on a ketogenic low carb diet, in the first week, you will lose water because 1 gram of glycogen stores up to 3 to 4 grams of water. Because so glycogen is made up of glucose. When you look at a structure of glucose, it has hydrogen, it has hydroxyl groups. Basic chemistry. Hydroxyl groups are prone to hydrogen bonds. And so since glucose has a lot of has a lot of potential to create hydrogen bonds, it will create hydrogen bonds with water. And as a function of that, you will store water when you're storing glycogen. So when you go on a low carb ketogenic diet, what will happen is that you lose that glycogen storage. And as a function of losing the glycogen storage, you will lose 3 to 4 times the water compared to the glycogen you have in your body. Everyone has different amounts of storage of glycogen in their body, depends on their weight, lean body mass, etc. And so to back this up, I'm going to pull up a figure. And so here's the figure. And so yeah, if you go on a ketogenic low carb diet, under 50 grams of carbs every day, you lose glycogen storage in liver and muscle. And then the body does not have an option to oxidize glucose. And so it relies on fat oxidation. Fat oxidation just is a fancy couple terms for burning fat and mobilizing fat and using up fat in your citric acid cycle in your biochemical pathway. And then this will deplete your fat storage as a function of that. You will also lose ketone bodies once you reach ketosis. And ketones can be used to produce glucose in the absence of glucose in the times of need by the brain and the body. And so here, the explanation here at the bottom here typically just says metabolic effects, right? The acute metabolic effects of a low carb diet. And the short-term metabolic adaptation is losing water because you're losing glycogen. And here they say that you could immediately lose up to 0.5 kilogram or a pound of water. And this is dependent on time scale, right? So to address this, back this up, when I started to lose weight initially, I lost 10 pounds in the first week. My eating pattern was a normal caloric deficit as a result of intermittent fasting. And so even if it's 5 pounds of fat loss, it's not logical to lose 5 pounds of fat loss if you have a moderate cut in the first week of weight loss. So I'm going to say 7 pounds of that was water and maybe 3 pounds was fat. Who knows? But if you see your scale go down 10 pounds in 1 week, majority of it's water weight and glycogen. It's not your fat. And so this is the first problem that we need to tackle. The second problem that we need to tackle is there any difference between ketogenic low carb diet compared to a normal high carb diet when we're looking at the effects of fat loss? And so there are several studies done. I have taken 2 studies, and I'll just pull up a graph of one study showing if there is any effect on weight in comparison of both diets, a high carb diet versus a ketogenic low carb diet. And so here's the graph of one of the studies. So if you look at this top one, if you look at this figure, right? High carb, the dot, right? The black dot, that is the high carb group, meaning the normal moderate carb, like 200, 300 carb group. VLCHF, it's for keto diet, ketogenic low carb diet. And that is the square here. And if you see over time, 24 weeks, the people who were in the keto group lost a little bit of more weight than the low carb, than the high carb group. But there's no significant difference. I think the p-value for this was 0.2. And in statistics, when you have a p-value of 0.2, it's not statistically significant. That means the data you see here are not conclusive of the fact that these differences are large. These differences are in fact small. Even if you look at, like, let's say, and look at the standard deviation bars of these two. Like, look at the variation. And that also plays into the account. Like, you look at the there's a variability in the terms of the weight the people lost in both groups. And so this was a highly non-significant result. And so it does not matter if you are on a low carb diet or a keto diet. And this is also a randomized control trial. Okay. And so there are several other studies. I will link it in the description so you can look at the description and stuff and the p-value if you really want to make sure. And the next thing I want to point out is weight regain, right? So weight regain. What percentage of people will regain the weight back? And now this is a question for you. Let's say you go on a ketogenic diet and you do that diet for 24 weeks. You do that for like 5 to 6 months. And you just want to go back to your normal carbohydrate diet because you're carb depleted. You are just over it. Do you think you'll regain the weight back? It might not be all of it, but it might be 50% of it. And that's a large number. Let's say in 24 weeks, you lose 35 pounds. But then in the next 6 months, you gain like 20 pounds back. That's a large number. That's a large weight to put back on. So it's, again, this is highly variable. Studies have shown that if you deviate from your lifestyle too much after weight loss, you will have a hard time to maintain that healthy weight. The reason why I'm still maintaining a 65-pound weight loss is because I'm eating the same for the past 5 years. If I go back to my normal high vegetarian, high simple carb diet, where I just ate carbohydrate foods, not even getting 100 grams of protein a day, I'm gonna gain all the weight back. But getting in more than 120 grams of protein every single day, most days, 6 out of the 7 days of the week, and actually prioritizing healthy meals over non-healthy meals is a way for me to maintain my healthy weight. So this is a question for people who always want quick fixes, who always want to go on carb restrictive diets in hopes to lose more weight. And yes, in that previous study, ketogenic diet lost more weight. And yes, because you're losing glycogen, you're losing water, you will lose a little bit of more weight. But are you actually losing fat? You're not losing fat at the end of the day. This is not to say that keto diet is bad. Last thing to point out here is carb restriction and binge eating. I have found a study that has been done with college students. Primarily, the cohort was females, because binge eating is really common in females. What they found was there was a positive association, carbohydrate restriction and disordered eating. So typically what this would look like is I would fast for 12 to 16 hours in the hopes to restrict carbs, but then when my fast is over, I will eat as many carbs as possible, whether it's due to stress or normal addictive behavior or addictive nature of some carbs on some people and different textures and tastes. And so this is like me, this is the analogy which I thought about when I learned about this. And so it's like a rubber band, right? So farther you stretch the rubber band, the farther you pull the rubber band away, the faster it will snap back. And so that's how this works in people who have actually mental health issues like binge eating disorder. So here is the description from the discussion of the study. Well, they say, although low-carb diet appears to be a successful way to lower body weight, their data reveal that this restrictive diet is related to worse eating attitudes. And so what typically happens is the more you restrict, the more you pull that rubber band, the faster it will push back. Specifically, they reported higher binge eating symptoms, and those symptoms would be eating a lot of carbs in a short amount of time, like maybe 2,000 calories in a short amount of time. And that is typically what happens is when you just eat carbs during intermittent fasting, you will overeat on carbs very easily, and you will feel full and you will feel like shit. Furthermore, individuals with disordered eating attitudes tend to disregard context, frequency, and quantity of food. So I think what they're saying here is when we talk about frequency of food, they don't have a sense of frequency, right? They will, and even I did this when I had a binge eating disorder. When I did a lot of intermittent fasting and one meal a day, there is no sense of quantity. Like your sense of quantity diminishes, and you tend to just eat, and eat because you justify that maybe eating one meal a day is healthy. You just eat food like there hasn't been any food around you. This diet mentality is described in one of the questions of the adapted subscale of cognitive restriction towards carbohydrates. I do not eat some food because they make me fat. So in particular, in relationship to carbohydrates, right? So one of the things that people with binge eating say that I do not eat ice cream because it makes me fat. I do not eat cereal because it makes me fat. I do not eat pizza because it makes me fat. That comes from the fear of food. That comes from the fear of food that they have learned or pass it down from parents or whatever. Stress. They just feel it's not that they will make you it's not that particular carbohydrate foods make you fat. It's really easy to overeat on those foods. It's easy to eat like 4 or 5 slices of pizza because it's so dense in calories. It's easy to eat a bowl of cereal which looks like a regular bowl of cereal but has probably 500 calories. It's easy to eat an entire bag of candy saying that I didn't eat enough, but it's actually 1,000 calories. It's easy. And so it's not that it makes you fat, but it's easy. You lose cognitive restriction with certain foods. And that's what happens during carb restriction if you have a history of binge eating disorder. And so what my conclusion here is, people who have binge eating disorder and people who think that you wouldn't be able to sustain a ketogenic low carb diet forever. You shouldn't do this. You should not do this at all to yourself. If you think that ketogenic diet helps you in every way, shape, or form, it helps you. Maybe you have other mental health disorders. Maybe ketogenic diet is the only way that you think that you can be healthy. By all means, follow a ketogenic diet. But it's not end all be all. It's very contextual. No one has to do anything because everything is individualized. What sort of eating pattern you have, what sort of deviations you have in your lifestyle will determine if you should go on a low carb ketogenic diet. All the factors I've said, you have to think about it and then make your own decision. Don't let a blind fitness influencer on Instagram or TikTok manipulate your thoughts. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this helped to solidify your decision to maintain a healthy lifestyle. I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.